Good afternoon. It is 3:30, so we will call the Redwood Coast Transit Authority meeting to order. And Nicole, if you do a quick roll call, I appreciate it.
Director Keim?
Here.
Director Cohen?
Here.
Director Smith?
Here.
Chairman Gitlin?
Here. Okay, we do have a quorum. And Director Keim, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we'll go through and we'll approve the minutes, entertain a motion to approve the minutes of September 20th, 2017. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we approve the minutes of September 20th, 2017.
Thank you, Director Smith. A second?
I'll second.
Okay, is there any discussion from the audience on the minutes of September 20th, 2017? Not seeing anyone responding. Bring it back to the board. Any questions from any board members? Anybody in comment? Seeing none? Okay, Nicole, please take the tally.
Director Smith?
Yes.
Director Cohen?
Yes.
Director Keim?
Yes.
Chairman Gitlin?
Here, yes. That would be here and yes. Okay. We'll move on to public comment. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to address Redwood Coast Transit Authority on public comment? See that there is none. We will close public comment and move on to the consent agenda where there is no activity. Joe, there is nothing added as an exigent matter, so we'll move on. No, nothing on consent agenda. I'm sorry. Thought I turned my phone off. Okay, let's go to item number 6, the update on the implementation of the new bus stop on 5th Street, the Jed Smith Center. Joe, bring us up to date.
Thank you, Chair Gitlin. We made progress. I had a meeting with the, as you know, after the last meeting, we had a concept that we wanted to move forward with in a location. And then on October 31st, we had a productive meeting on site with the property manager for the shopping center, the store manager for Safeway, who we hadn't been able to get a hold of, but we just fortunate he happened out right while we were there, and with reps from the city. And I made a slight adjustment then to the approach, moving the bus stop a little bit easterly, which will work just as fine because there's less slope there. And then in the subsequent time, in the 2 weeks or so that's passed since then, the city was, we're waiting on a response from the city. We met yesterday, and they are not going to require us to do anything more than our part of the project, which is great. So we need to get an encroachment permit from them and get a second quotation from a contractor. We'll probably firm up the first one, being as it moved slightly a few feet east, but not too far. And then we're ready to proceed with the project. So we have the city's support. They've been great to work with, so we can get this built before we meet again.
Okay, I'll open this up to the public comment.
Oh, one thing, and
sorry,
the city has offered to do the relocation of the shelter from our yard where it currently sits to the location once the concrete's cured, so as a part of the project.
Mr. Lonsdale, would you please identify yourself and give us
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Bill Lonsdale and I live in Crescent City. We haven't made much progress in actual construction or implementation of the new stop, and the rainy season is upon us. We lost precious time because we didn't meet in October. So my question is the same as it was back on the 20th of September. What will we do in the meantime until that shelter and pad are in? People are standing against the south wall of Rite Aid getting soaked even as we speak. And I think that we can't allow that to go on. I would respectfully suggest that you urge First Transit to either go back to the way they were doing it before or to adopt the suggestion that they pull into the lot on the side of Safeway where fire engines can go and where semis can go but apparently our buses can't go. Let's overcome that obstacle, and let's give the people a place to shelter while they're waiting for the bus. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lonsdale. Any additional public comment on item number 6, the update on the implementation of the new bus stop, 5th Street, in the Jedediah Smith Center? Seeing no additional public comment, we will close public comment, bring it back to the board for discussion. Directors?
Joe, can you respond to that? Why we can't do that, or can we do that, or how we can arrange to keep our riders under some shelter?
The same reasons that we talked about at the last meeting are the reasons not to drive fixed route through a parking lot 70 or 80 times a day. There's risk of collisions with bus and pedestrians, bus and automobiles. It's a major risk factor, and it delays the bus.
I wasn't here at the last meeting, so
Right.
go back and tell me what you guys were saying. You're saying there's risk in driving a bus through a parking lot. That
Right.
does not seem reasonable to me.
Well, the more trips through parking lots are some of the most dangerous places that any bus or any vehicle actually, or person could walk or
We all do
operate
it.
in.
We drive our cars.
Right.
We, that doesn't seem like an adequate response. We've
Well,
done it before.
in addition, the routes were all running late all the time, so we did this change to consolidate the bus stops as a way to get the routes back on time and reduce the risk of an accident.
Okay, so it sounds to me like the real reason is we're losing time because it's slower to go through the parking lot. So we were going to change the routes. That has been an issue, and it's been an ongoing issue, and I agree with Mr. Longsdale. I'm amazed at how often we cancel meetings. It's very irritating to me as well, so I hear you, sir. And now we are in the winter season, or the rainy season, and we were doing it for so many years that I just don't see why we can't do it while we are making the changes. We did it before, why can't we do it now until the shelter is in place?
We can do it now if you guys want.
So you're saying if the board chooses to make a motion to make that correction temporarily while we're finishing up the project, that's what it would take?
Sure. It's not an action item. We can take direction however you guys want to go.
Well, let's hear from other directors on this subject, because there is another side, and I'm sorry, Director Cowan, you missed the last meeting where this was actually addressed, and we have discussed it, that public safety kind of trumps everything. And there is an issue here. I've had some close calls in that parking lot. And someone comes out of nowhere, it's dark, and collisions occur. Now, I've asked that question in the last meeting about what is the risk? And there is one. Because anytime you go into an area where there isn't any defined crosswalk and people are moving and crossing in different areas, there are lots of blind spots, especially on larger vehicles. And with all due respect, Mr. Lonsdale, public transit does, that public safety item has to be considered, irrespective of the rainy season. I understand that, but I would hate to think that we were going to make a decision, and then ultimately, because we rushed to judgment, again, because of the rain, that someone got hurt or worse. So I think that needs to be brought to the attention, as was done at our last meeting, and you did show me the wisdom of the decision and being deliberative, Joe, on that, and I think that has to be considered as we work to solve this problem.
Joe, how long were we doing this before? I mean, how many years did we do this before it stopped? I mean, years. I know
Yeah,
it's been years,
many, I
years,
suppose.
many years this has happened. And in the many years, even though there was a risk, how many accidents, how many people did we hit? How many accidents do we have?
None that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you.
We also do have a designated crosswalk right there where we're talking about. There's striping in the parking lot. So we do have, I understand, Roger, people do cross in spots that's not designated, but there is striping there.
I appreciate that, and I hear what you're saying, Director Keim, that sometimes pedestrians act in an irresponsible way, and we do have oversized vehicles, and there are blind spots. I think that's to be considered.
But consider,
Well, hold on,
No.
without interrupting me,
you
if I can,
said that
if I can just
for
finish.
years and years and
Okay,
years,
direct,
we never
okay.
had any problems.
Okay.
So why are we worried now for
All right, if I can finish my comment, thank you. I would say on this issue, I asked the very same questions at our last meeting, which Director Cowan, you were not at. And I actually said, what is the risk here? And it was brought to my attention that there is a risk. Now, whether something actually has to happen before we wake up and say, gee, should have, would have, could have, but we didn't, we are going to address this issue, but we're going to do it in an irresponsible manner in which public safety is not substitute from being the priority of these vehicles that are moving from point A to point B, sometimes in dark weather and sometimes in conditions where you can't see everything. And I'm going to side on the side of caution when we're moving in areas that are heavily trafficked, and sometimes, Director Keim, they're not walking in and out of crosswalks. They're walking where it's convenient, and we don't see them. We don't see vehicles in the back of us or people in the back of us, and we don't see them sometimes to the side, and I think that has to be considered. So go ahead, Director Smith.
Mr. Chair, if I can ask Joe, I might have missed this, but you said you're seeking the encroachment permit for the shelter. When do you anticipate that shelter is going to be in place? Do you have any, maybe I missed that, but do you have a feel for how much time?
I hate to name a date, but it should be within a month before the holidays, hopefully.
Okay, so then here's something else I'm curious about. I have to ask. I understand you're going to put the ADA compliance in there, but can you put the shelter in place ahead of the ADA improvements and have that there before you do the grade for the wheelchairs?
No, the concrete has to be poured and
Probably
cured before,
liability issues.
Right, and it would, right now, there's just grass in that area, so, yeah, no, that wouldn't work. The pad's got to be built first. One thing I want to mention, though, is I stood out there and simulated the whole situation. You can see the bus coming from 2 blocks away, and it has to come through and turn around at the back of the cul-de-sac on 5th. And see, there's plenty, folks are waiting underneath the Safeway entry until they see the bus come, and then they make their way over because they have plenty of time to cross and catch it. So it's not like they're forced to wait out in the rain. I'm not saying that anyone's a liar or incorrect, they may be, but they certainly can wait under the awning until they see the bus coming. It's not like it travels 100 miles an hour. It takes its time, and then has to turn around in the back and then pull up to the stop, the temp stop that's currently next to Rite Aid. So there's a lot of time to walk across the street and catch the bus.
Mr. Lonsdale, I'm going to re-invite you up to the dais if you want to have some comments, because your opinion is a valid one, it's important, and I would like to see if we can get any clarification from you, because you're involved in this situation, that you would be satisfied with a little deliberative patience as we address this problem.
I think the only, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the only proper response to Mr. Rye's assertion that you can see the bus coming a mile away and you can make it across the street with your groceries and with a walker, if you have one, from the shelter in front of Safeway, is something that's subject to demonstration. And I have urged all the members of the board to go over there and try it. And if you conclude that it's not an onerous thing for your constituents and Redwood Coast Transit's customers to do that, then the issue is moot. But if you conclude that it is too hard, and it is actually more dangerous negotiating that dip, both dips, in 5th Street to get over there in a hurry, I would venture to say that the risk of accident there is worse than the risk of driving down that side of Safeway. Thank you.
Okay, any additional comments from directors? Go ahead.
Yes. So, Joe, I think we talked about this at the last meeting, but even if the bus were to pull along the north side of Safeway down that parking lot, that would be a problem, as opposed to 5th Street. In other words, they would be closer to Safeway. If, rather than park in front of the store, which I agree, I mean, I see both sides of it, but it is a safety issue. There's people coming and going out of the store. The bus, I've seen it. There's potential for problems there. But would it be possible to pull the bus around on the north side of Safeway to try to get it closer to Safeway?
We'd have to test the turning movement out of Fifth. It'd be a sharp right and then an immediate left into that fire lane that has been mentioned. It's possible, though. It'd be a better spot than the front because there's less pedestrian activity on the side.
Okay, any additional comments from other directors at this? We'll move this option on. Mr. Lonsdale, thank you for additional comment. Is there anyone else who wishes to make comment from the audience on public? Allow another public.
Well,
Go
to
ahead.
speak to your what you were witnessing, that they're waiting under the awning at Safeway and then crossing, there is no crosswalk there. So they're basically just, waiting.
Is it a jaywalk? Are you saying
They're
jaywalk?
jaywalking. Yeah. Not that I think anyone has ever received a jaywalking ticket in Crescent City. But, I also think that Safeway put LED bulbs in that parking lot because it is brighter than it used to be. They no longer have that yellow hue. So I think as they burn out, they have been replacing them with LEDs.
Right. I'd like to take some action today to change the situation. I agree. I think walking across the street with no crosswalk right now, it's only a month. It's something that we were doing continuously for years and years and years. I'm asking that we take that risk for another 30 days. You said it's not that long, so that it is not only safer for our constituents and our customers, but it makes more sense. And I'd like to somehow take direction that way and see how the rest of the board feels.
Is that a motion?
Yeah, I make a motion.
Is there a second?
Well, I missed what's the form of the motion?
I would like to, and I don't even know that we can do a motion because it is not on the agenda, but take.
Was this an action item?
We can.
No.
It's not,
Okay, so it would have to
but-
be agendized for the next
Just,
meeting.
you can just give me consensus and we can do it. I mean, this is an operational issue. We do this sort of stuff all the time.
Consensus, I'd like to get consensus for the board that we bring, the pickup area over in the Safeway parking lot, whether that's out front or on the north end, as Director Smith pointed out, whatever works for us. I think that is much safer than having them cross the street.
I would like to see them picked up on the Safeway side and not the Rite Aid side.
So that's not going across the street?
Not
Okay.
crossing the street.
Okay.
I go along with that.
Whether you make that sharp right, sharp left, whether you attempt that or whether you go through the front, having people stand out in the rain with groceries just,
So I need to get the clarity of, people are not crossing the street, where are they ingressing on the bus? Where's the bus parked when this is happening? That they're getting the bus? Joe, explain to me where.
Right now, they cross the street and they
Okay.
pick it up on the Rite
So
Aid
where,
side.
in the alternative, which is I'm hearing, the three members would like to see our riders not cross the street. Where are you
Yeah.
going to put, where's the bus going to be?
We'll try the fire lane if it's feasible. If not, we'll bring them back through the whole parking lot like we did for years and hope for the best and hurry up and deliver the project in about a month and we'll be done. And then they'll be boarding on the Safeway side of Fifth in the accessible spot with the shelter, right?
Okay, if this board decides to direct you to pick up passengers and drop off passengers in the Jed Smith Center, which is essentially no change, there is still a public safety aspect that has not been addressed, albeit there's not been any incidents, but that doesn't mean there can't be one. I just would like to get clarity that this is what, I'm a little uncomfortable with it at this point, until such time as we get a permanent location, one that is away from the traffic. I'm trying to picture the parking lot as I'm talking to you, but somewhere in the, more toward Fifth Street, but in an area that's been designated where you can actually put the bus away from traffic, away from other vehicles. And I don't think we have permission to do that at this point, other than to drop off, pick up and drop off people right in front of the Safeway like we've been doing before. And I asked that question before, and I was highly cautioned by you, Joe, that that is a dangerous condition. That's what I heard clearly at our last meeting, and that's what kind of turned my mind around. And again, rain notwithstanding, when it comes up against a dangerous situation, I'm going to err on the side of caution. So I'm not in support of that, but if you...
Three of us are.
And I want to clarify that. Are we all on board with that?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay?
And regarding the safety, Chair Gitlin, I agree, but you could also argue it's unsafe for the passengers to cross Fifth Street to get to the bus. There's traffic going back and forth.
Agreed.
We can make that argument, that's a safety issue there too.
Well, it was changed at some, we've already decided, and it's going to happen because 3 of you have decided that that's right. But it's going to, people are going to, I'm trying to think of what is in the best interest of our constituents from a public safety standpoint. And I'm not sure that the existing condition, according to our director, Joe, you let us know that this could be a dangerous situation at our last meeting, and that's why I've done it about. Okay, we'll move on. You have that direction.
Again, just to recap, make sure we're all clear, the fire lane is the preference if we can make the turn, because that balances safety
I would feel better about
with the, you guys are pushing for the convenience to get closer to the overhang, I get that, so the fire lane would be
reducing the safety issue.
right, so that's what we'll try to do.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to throw caution to the wind, but, I mean, we need to have people on walkers not crossing Fifth Street to get over to Rite Aid.
So Joe, can the bus, if you do opt to go on the north side of Safeway, can the bus go in the driveway on the north side and turn in and then turn along the side there, as opposed to going in front of the whole shopping center?
What we'll do, we'll try to do that first, that would be my preference. If that fails, we'll have to go in front of the whole shopping center like the old way of doing
That might
things.
help your time element too.
Yeah, the fire lane would be superior to the front, agreed.
Thank you for your...
Okay, we've got that solved, and Joe, you have clarity on that?
Yes.
Okay,
thank you.
we'll move on to item number 7, presentation of fiscal year 2016-17 annual report, performance measures. Joe?
Thank you, and this is one where I needed a few extra days to get the report done, such as it is, and I handed these out to you, so you should each have a copy in front of you. This looks back at our last fiscal year. At our last meeting, we looked at the financials from last year, and then this is more of the operational performance of the system. Last year was basically largely unchanged from the past. All the changes that we've just been talking about didn't get implemented until July 1, so all last fiscal year, we were pretty much running the same system we were in prior years. Fares were the same, routes were the same. We had the Greyhound Interline Ticket Partnership all year. We began talking about, but we didn't feel too much of the effects of the funding reduction, but we sure did talk about it a lot during the year. The system as a whole last year continued its fairly long-term trend of performance decline. Ridership went down about 7,000 riders last year compared to the prior year, which went down about 6,000 compared to the year before that. So the system's not going in the right direction. 4.8% was the percentage loss in ridership, and that's system-wide, so that includes both modes, which is fixed route and dial-a-ride. The dial-a-ride was actually down a little more than the fixed. Our annual revenue hours actually dropped a bit too, and that's a little, some of that's your dial-a-ride hours, because as demand goes down, so does the hours performing it. And some of it might have been also like calendar differences. So I don't know exactly. We'll continue to dig into that data, but I don't have an explanation of that because we didn't do any actual cognitive service cutting. We did trim some running time minutes on some routes, the Route 20. That might have affected a little of it, but it went down slightly. Our productivity, which is our passengers that use the service per hour that we run it, went down, albeit slightly, from 6.44 to 6.33 last year, riders per revenue hour. That continued a long-term slight decline that started back in 11-12 when we hit our recent peak of 7.39 riders per hour, so it's been kind of slipping gradually since then. If you look into, I didn't have a chance to go down to the route level for different performance measures, and if you look at your tables, the yellow shades are estimates that are just plugged in because we haven't got the final fiscals back from the auditor's office. So these are guesses basically, so you can kind of see how they compare to last year. But it shows the ridership loss down a few percentage points. Our cost per passenger, well, that's the cost measures that would be taken with a grain of salt because we haven't got the finals. These are totally ballpark estimates. The productivity is final. That shows a 10% drop in productivity. And this number doesn't match, so that might be your fixed route only versus 6.33, which is system-wide. Our revenue service hours went down from just under 21,000 to 19,577. And, but yet our miles stayed about steady. So that tells me some of it was the trimmed running time minutes that are in the schedule on the Route 20. We did that about a year or so ago, so that would have been reflected in the fiscal year. But some of it might be more holidays or just the way the calendar played out that year. And then we isolate dial-a-ride towards the last page here, showing this is purely your dial-a-ride, so then you could do the math to separate out the fixed route. But dial-a-ride also showed some ridership loss, significant of 8% down from the prior fiscal year, although productivity was actually higher. So that's kudos to our operational folks for batching trips better and being more productive with what they've had. Passengers per revenue mile went down, so sometimes that's a matter of where they're going and how far they're riding in dial-a-ride. But that is a little peculiar, being as the passengers per hour went up slightly. We ran about 500 less hours for the year, which is generally good because this is a service that doesn't have its own funding source. And miles were down like nearly 7,000. So you can tell dial-a-ride demand had slipped in the fiscal year. And again, the financials are just placeholder numbers, so we're probably somewhere around 8% farebox recovery on dial-a-ride like we were the year before. If the board wishes, we can finish out and get more detail and maybe bring that back at our next meeting in a couple months. We can look at some route by route, Crescent City local, and the regional routes. I didn't get a chance to get to those and isolate the stats, and then we'll have final financials by that time from the auditor's office. And we can do an updated version of this, but I wanted to get you guys something for this meeting besides the other two items we have. So I was able to put this together real quick.
Thank you, Joe. Directors, comments?
Mr. Chair, I have one. Joe, I read this earlier in your earlier correspondence, and it puzzles me about why the ridership is down. Because I would think most of our transit customers are lower income, transit dependent, they need the bus to get around. So, and you mentioned that you're not sure of the factors, but I was curious, do you know, is there an increase in commercial taxi service in town, or is there some competing interest that's drawing the customers, or is it possible that maybe that populace is shrinking in this area? I'm just curious.
Those are all good thoughts. I really don't know. There is a competing service that impacts things, and that's the Europe Tribal Transit System. Because not only are they competing, and they sort of drove Route 10 to the point where we had to kill it during the funding crisis, but then they go point to point, whereas folks used to transfer to local routes when they got into town off the Klamath route, the Route 10. Now they don't need to do that because they sort of do a little round and drop people off at their site. So they hurt us both on the 10 and the locals. So that could have something to do with it. There may also be population factors.
Now I thought
us,
I thought he was here. He gave a very good presentation, by the way. But I thought he was they're demand responsive, right? I thought he was emphasizing that they weren't picking up passengers. That primarily they were taking tribal members to work. Like some of them work at Home Depot. So they're actually picking up additional passengers on your travels back and forth.
I think so. Their rule is they require at least 3 folks in order to make the trip to Crescent City. So if there's a group of 3 that might have rode our bus before, now they'll catch They'll pick it up down in Klamath and get a ride in here, then get dropped off at their exact destination. So that hurts us probably, in that case, 6 riders lost, because we lost the 3 that might have took the old 10, and were it's still there. And then also the local buses around here too. So I might be wrong, but that's the way I was explained to me from his staff, is that as long as there's 3 or more, they pick them up and they take them to their destination here. So they bypass our system totally.
Okay, so since they're demand responsive, they don't necessarily have to have a bus stop to pick up passengers, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Also, Director Smith, we have 3 cab companies now. I thought 2 were new, but Director Keim was telling me 1's new this year.
Yeah.
So 1 is new.
Postal cab is new
Okay.
and very reliable.
So there's that. That may be also part of the reason.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional directors' comments on this? We'll open up to the public then.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Bill Lonsdale again. It's unfortunate that this was dropped on us at the last minute, because there's been no time to absorb it or formulate any questions about it. I hope that's an isolated occurrence. But I will say this, the fare box recovery on both Dial-A-Ride and the system as a whole are figures that most transit systems would envy. And I say this each time this report comes out. Whatever else we have in the way of problems, Redwood Coast Transit is turning in a wonderful fiscal record in terms of fare box recovery. When I first started following this stuff down in Monterey County, 10% was considered great for a system. And here we are at 18% and up from 15 last year. This is wonderful, and it's good work on the part of First Transit and Redwood Coast Transit. And it reflects well on both Mr. Wall, who has had part of this, and Mr. Rye, who has part of it. One of the things that's disappointing to me about this is that you're not getting what your predecessor boards got regularly, got on a quarterly basis and on an annual basis, which is the line-by-line or route-by-route analysis and comparison, so that you're not flying blind. You're identifying problems ahead of time. It's not waiting until somebody crawls out from under the black cloth at the end of the year and says, oh, we got a problem. You don't really know which of your good performing lines are based on this, and you haven't had quarterly reports as far as I can tell. I don't remember whether you voted not to have them. I don't recall that. But they were an essential part of following the progress of the system around the year. And without it, you don't really know what's going on out there on the street. And it's unfortunate. You guys are doing your best, but you have to be provided with the information. So I'd strongly recommend that we go back to using the line-by-line comparisons and reports. Thank you.
Additional public comments? Seeing none, we'll close public comments, bring it back to the directors, and to see if we would like to get a delineation of some of the data here on a route level, rather than a gross level, to see where there are some weak links there. I have one concern here, and I don't know if it's something that is raising a red flag in front of you, Joe, but there seems to be an incremental decrease each year in ridership. Is this an aberration, or do you see it leveling off?
No, it's an extreme concern,
Yeah.
but it is the same in all over the United States right now. Only a few star agencies are actually enjoying ridership increase. The last several years have been bad for everybody. But yeah, it's certainly not, we don't want it bad for us. We want to be one of the star agencies that bucks the trend, but that's not the case.
So now fuel prices are going up again. No surprise there, SB1. So now maybe this will increase ridership, is that?
It could help us, yeah, and then we put in a new fare structure that we think's more fair, and at least inducing the regional trips to the south. So yeah, we're cautiously optimistic, but no, this annual report's nothing to be happy about.
Would this, the authority like to see a more detailed report broken down by routes on some of these statistics?
Does your contract allow, I know you have limitations on your contract. does the contract allow you to provide additional, I know you have time constraints, but is that something you could do for us?
Yeah, no, if this meeting would have been Friday, you'd have that. I just need 2 more days to do the work. I've been busy with the Safeway bus stop, we've had a lot of grants, we've cut service, we've adopted a new fare structure, we've done a lot of things that weren't done a few years ago, in the years prior to recently. But yeah, this report, we just needed more time to put those together. They would have been probably another 6, 8 pages towards the end. After the breakout of the dial-a-ride would come the breakout of the regional routes and the locals.
All right, so there's a consensus to see a little more detailed information by routes. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
Okay. I think it would be good. Okay. Joe, if you'd put it on your radar screen, I'd appreciate it. And this is an update. There's no action item here. So we'll move on to item number 8 and to get an update on market research project.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. We are smack dab in the middle of a week of outreach to stakeholder groups and riders and drivers on the focus group interview phase of the market research project. Last time we were here, we awarded the contract and we mentioned to the board that we were going to kick off right away with the onboard survey because that we felt would be more weather dependent. If we waited deep into the winter, we'd have less riders to talk to. So that happened right away. The data is not available yet, but that was conducted at the very end of September, and the data should be available to us soon, hopefully by December. But this phase is the follow-up on that, the second phase where we're meeting with stakeholder groups in the community to talk about perceptions of the system, things we should be doing that aren't, are doing that shouldn't, experience that they've had on the bus, and it's already been a really exciting week. We've met with the parks, several representatives from the Park Service this morning. We had a meeting then today. We had 2 meetings at the college, one with students and one with faculty administration at College of the Redwoods, Del campus. And then tomorrow we have 2 driver meetings. They're in 2 groups. And then we have a meeting of riders that we've recruited with flyers on the bus that are interested in sharing their experiences with us. So then hopefully there's a possibility on Friday of another meeting with the visitor center group. It's not yet firmed up, but we're still trying for it. And then that'll result in a companion report that then will then sort of mesh with the onboard survey and provide these other stakeholder viewpoints on the system. And then this is all being done this fiscal year in preparation for next fiscal year when we get our money for our short-range plan, our transit development plan project, where we actually look at the financials and the routes. And even though we've made some changes to routes and we're having fun with that, but next year we'll be doing even more, considering even more changes to what we're doing in the transit development plan process. So this will give us fresh information for what the community wants.
Public comment?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, sorry to be a spring butt today, but I have a comment about the survey instrument that was published in the package. I don't know, has the board approved that survey instrument?
We have.
If you have?
We have.
When did that occur?
We gave you direction to move forward on.
Yeah, they didn't approve the survey document, they approved doing the project.
No, not the day-to-day.
What strikes me there, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, is that it's structured in a couple of areas, and I'll admit a bias here, to favor the outcome that staff prefers. And that is the question about whether or not they agree or disagree with driving through parking lots. That's not a pertinent question for your riders. The pertinent question is, do you want to stop closer to Safeway, and do you want to stop closer to Walmart? That's the way that should be phrased, because that will give it the outcome that you really need to know. An abstract thing like driving through a parking lot, who in the world is going to understand what that means? So that's what I would suggest you make a change to. And if they've already been printed without your having seen it, too bad.
Additional public comments? Comments from the directors?
Mr. Chair, I have one. Sorry to be so commenting, but...
No, it's okay. That's what we're here for.
So, Joe, I read the materials, and your focus groups, I think you have a tourist, you have hotel representatives, and parks, I think parks representatives. for the tourism side. It's unfortunate that we can't actually talk to tourists to see, you know, what they would like. But I was curious, on your onboard surveys, you might have tourists on there. So if you do have tourists on the onboard survey, are you guys gleaning that off? In other words, is there some way to take their, if they are tourists, and take their, and the tourists are still here, I'm pretty sure, because I hear foreign languages around town, so. Is there some way to glean that off if it's an onboard survey and they're a tourist? Does that come out?
No, we don't have a way of isolating where they're from on the onboard survey, unfortunately. I mean, that would be, I guess it would be possible if we'd have thought of it that way, but the onboard survey's already been done, as we talked about. It was done at the end of September before it started raining.
Right.
That's why we're going through the stakeholder groups as a proxy for the tourists. It would be hard. We don't have many that ride our bus now, so it'd be pretty difficult to try to find one and then get surveys out of them, or a focus group. So we do the general ridership group that's going to be tomorrow, and then we talk to all of them. They all filled out surveys a month ago.
Are you guys still stopping in Prairie Creek?
Yes.
Most of those should be tourists, right?
True. Yeah, they should be. And we're doing, that stop does pretty well.
Can you pin it down by stop? You know, the onboard surveys, can you pin it down?
You could a future onboard survey. This one was, didn't ask them where they were going. It wasn't really an O&D survey. It didn't ask their stop or where they're going. It mostly asked them a bunch of questions about general service stuff.
Okay, thank you.
Additional comments?
Well, that kind of concerns me. I would think when you're asking questions or taking a survey, you want to know the demographics of who you're surveying. And so you're telling me that we did not do that at all.
We asked a demographic about, we got some general information, age, gender, and family income.
But not about if they're local or tourist.
No.
Would that be something we can add if we are to do another onboard
Sure.
survey? Okay.
Yeah, we definitely could. The perception that what I'm hearing from our operations people is they don't see many tourists. So, I mean, it's a small amount.
And I wouldn't think so either. I would think that our ridership is local. And and me personally, I'm looking for, I still strongly believe we're missing a whole market with the students in Humboldt State. I really do. And I was very disappointed. I've sat on this board almost a year now, and we made no motion. It got kind of, it wasn't important to this board to pursue that. And I think I sat in here in the springtime, we talked about, reaching out to the colleges and stuff, and none of that happened. And I hope that this board sees to, maybe go after that next year, because I honestly feel you're missing a big market.
Oh, and I agree. If I could follow up on Director Collins' comments, we actually, we just had a great session at the College of the Redwoods locally. So the HSU, I was down there doing a little research, kind of riding the bus system and seeing, it's amazing the bus ridership that the local system gets down there to the college. But one of the topics that we were talking with the representatives up here about today were, do they plan on transferring to a four-year school? If so, HSU is the common one. And would they like to be able to stay home and commute by bus and be able to continue living up here? And it was positive. So, they point out issues we know about. Our schedule's not the most friendly to them. Now, it came out that they'd love to see an earlier bus, even though the first morning trip's quite early. But they said if they could get an even earlier one that would get them down to Arcata for 8 o'clock classes and 9 o'clock classes, that would be good for them.
Yeah.
So, we got quite a bit of information just today on that topic.
Excellent. So, and I'm going to totally mess this up, but going back months, we were talking about changing all the routes. One of the routes that was not agreed upon would have accommodated them a little bit better. Am I correct?
Yeah,
I don't remember which one that was, but I remember being like, I can't believe we just...
20.
Yeah, it was 20. Chair's right, and we voted not to do that, so it would have cost a little more, but yeah.
Yeah, but that would have been more accommodating to them. So hopefully, this board will look at that, and maybe adjustments will be made if we do go in the direction of trying to get that student ridership.
I very much recall our conversation in encouraging people, reaching out to see our students, to commute down to Arcata for classes, and I don't think there were a lot of takers. I think you did outreach there, Joe.
We're continuing to do it.
Yeah,
There's
and
interest.
There wasn't a great deal of demand for that at that time. Now, I think there's 500 students at CR, and I don't know how many possible transfers are going on to Humboldt State, but I know we did an outreach on that, and we didn't get a lot of feedback. I mean, that was your direction. I know we did that, and I know we had the discussion. We had the discussion at the same discussion as we did when we were talking about the airport route, about when we didn't have service. It was at the very same time we did that. I want to say it was March or April meeting that we had that, when there wasn't an opportunity to have getting people down to the airport in McKinleyville about doing. That's when we did that. So I have no problem in revisiting it again, but I know we made decisions based on money and the saving of money, and we cut down from 3 down to 2 trips on Route 20, if I'm not mistaken, is what our decision was.
We kept it at 3.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, but what did you do? We amended the Klamath Glen stop? Yeah.
Right.
All right.
Yeah, we took out the route that went, the separate sort of duplicative route that went to Klamath was eliminated. That saved a lot of money. And then we added the Glen to the Route 20 to give them some lifeline service. But, right, I think in the spring you'll see once we get the report done. But what we heard, just because it just happened a few hours ago, we heard, there's a lot of interest in filling that gap in the schedule and how it would make it more attractive for folks that go down there for a multitude of trip purposes, including college, but also even medical. Right now you have to go for the full day. So.
Joe, just to clarify, because maybe I'm not remember, I know we had this discussion from the dais about it, but did you physically ever talk to anybody at the college in Humboldt? Did we reach out to students down there?
We have not done anything at
We did not do
HSU
that.
yet, no.
Okay, that's what I thought.
I thought, I'm kind of fuzzy in that, but I thought Kevin or somebody worked with the campuses. I kind of vaguely remember that, like...
I remember having a discussion, but if this authority wants to instruct Joe to do an outreach, to see if there is a population of students from CR who want to commute down to, for classes down at Humboldt State, then we can do that. We can do it by consensus, or we can do it, just ask you to do an outreach to see if there's a genuine interest. And then see if we can add some ridership. Right now, people are, if they're carpooling, and we can put them in an RCTA bus, then that would be a plus and increase our ridership. But I seem to remember there were not a lot of takers at that time. I don't know if it was Joe or you told me that, but I remember that we didn't really hook any fish with that.
And I think one of the issues was the timing of the schedules.
Right.
Didn't coincide necessarily with the students.
Right, I think it's almost a chicken and the egg thing. Right now, they're not doing it because the schedule's not easy to work with. You have to be down there all day. But we just actually did this outreach today with students and administrators at the local College of Redwood's campus, and they expressed some interest, so we want to keep working with them on that.
Right.
A lot of it was fix the schedule and you'll get more riders kind of thing. But yeah, no, there seems to be some market. I don't know the depth of the market yet, though.
Okay, all right. Any additional comments or discussion? Otherwise, we'll move on to item number 9. We're going to meet Chuck Clarkson today. He's the new
Yes.
First
I
Transit.
think Chuck's still with us.
Okay, so Joe, take it away and introduce Chuck to us.
Well, Chuck, I'm very proud to introduce Chuck. He was identified by First Transit after a search as the best fit for replacing Kevin Heckman as our local general manager, so our only full-time employee here on site and the boss over all the drivers and dispatchers. And Chuck comes to us from Portland, TriMet, First Transit contract, and he's been here 3 weeks now?
This is my 4th week.
4th week,
Yeah,
and
that
seems
was
to be doing great. So Chuck, please introduce yourself.
Well, I am Chuck Clarkson. I am glad to be here. I've been in transportation for about 8 years. I've been a driver, I've been a road supervisor, I've been a trainer, I've been a behind-the-wheel trainer, I've been a safety manager, and now I'm getting to check out the general manager part, or the project manager is your terminology, as our TriMet, or our First Transit terminology has me as a general manager. But I'm glad to be here, getting to know the staff, spent some time on some routes, getting to know the routes that we take and the people who ride them, and getting to know the community. I think it's pretty cool that within 5 minutes of my office, I can be to the ocean or I can be up into the Redwoods. I'm enjoying that immensely. So,
Welcome aboard.
thank you very much.
Any questions? Thank you.
I have an important question, Mr. Chair.
Please.
Once again. Chuck, your predecessor accepted donuts occasionally. Under your regime, do you still accept that gratuity?
Could you seriously look at me and think I turned down donuts?
Well done.
Okay, thank you. That's good to know. Thank you.
All right, Joe, you give us a general manager verbal report, and you'll update us on the new buses.
Yes.
And the transit security, and of course, we just had a special meeting at Local Transportation Commission authorizing about $318,000 worth of spending for bus stop repairs and other things like that. It's a lot of money, so give us an update.
Thank you. And we also have Nick West, our maintenance manager for First Transit here, so he can, I'd actually like to share the mic with Nick if he'd like to give us a little update on the new buses, because they've not been without a little drama. We got 4 new ones, as you recall, one very small sedan-type vehicle, one smaller cutaway for Dial-A-Ride, and then 2 larger ones that are mostly going to go on the regional services, the Smith River to Arcata stuff. And the 2 smaller ones went into service relatively nicely, the way we always like them to, without any issues. And the 2 larger ones have not been as fortunate. So Nick's been busy with those, and he can give us an update, hopefully soon.
Ladies and gentlemen on the board, I'm Nick West. I've been working with, Creative Bus Sales and with Eldorado. We've finally determined what the problem is with the new big buses, and parts are scheduled to be shipped tomorrow. We're expecting roughly the 1st of December to have them on the road. Most of the parts are here to get everything up to par.
Questions for Nick? Public questions for Nick, Mr. Lonsdale? Okay, everything's working fine, other than, how's the new little bus doing?
It's doing great. 210, which is the little bus, and Unit 220, which is a mid-size bus, they're actually reducing the amount of pressure on me right now. So we had a few setbacks this past month with breakdowns, and we're currently at 2 buses down, as we were in September. They've shuffled their places, but we're still at 2 down.
Okay.
So,
All right, a good meeting with you, Nick. Thank you for the update. Come back to you, Joe, and
Thanks, Nick.
finish the rest of your verbal report.
So we got a little more help on the way too. We stepped in when there was a real quick call for anyone that was interested in obtaining a second-hand bus cutaway similar to what we run here in Crescent City. And we went ahead and submitted our interest, showed our current fleet lineup and how it had been allowed to age a little bit more than it should over the years. And we were awarded this adopted bus, we're calling it. So we'll be bringing it to town next week. It was obtained using 5311 money by Calaveras County for a project they had that then subsequently fizzled out. And then Caltrans, rather than have the bus go to waste or get surplus in some other method, they were looking for another similar property that runs rural intercity service. So it'll be coming to us. It's not spec'd out exactly the way we would order it. It's a gasoline-powered vehicle when we usually go diesel on the regional routes. But still, we're working with Nick and Kevin and now Chuck, and it's 2 years old, it's pretty low mileage, so we can find a use for it. It will need to be put on the Route 20 some, that's part of the caveat of the adoption. So I believe we'll strategize to put it on some of the more short-haul ones, between Smith River and Crescent City and stuff, where the terrain and the elevation changes aren't quite so challenging. So it'll be a nice addition that's going to further help Nick a little bit with the fleet. So we should have that to use for about 4 or 5 years. and it should be, depending, we're going to have to get our logo on it. It's not going to come to us saying Redwood Coast Transit, so it probably won't be in service until maybe the end of the year or sometime mid-December, but, we've known about it for a while, so Nick's obtaining some of the things we need. We got to get a new radio and stuff, so it won't go into service right away the next day, but hopefully within a month or so. So that'll also help with the fleet. And it's a mid-size one, so it'll be a little smaller than what we run normally on the intercity stuff. But yeah, we're pleased to bring that to town. And the price was right as well.
I was going to ask it, I hope you got a good
No
deal.
cost to us, right?
Okay, there you go.
Other than me going down to get it.
Excellent.
We have completed, I don't know if anyone's had a chance to drop by the bus yard, but we've completed a number of projects lately. Most notably, it will be when you come in, the electronic gates are installed, and those are funded by funds that we had been receiving in small increments over many years from the Prop 1B transit security silo from Prop 1B. So those projects have been delivered, and the gates are working. There's a pin pad. Well, they weren't working today so much with the power out, but if we go by tomorrow, hopefully they'll be working. In addition, separate project, but same funding source, we've equipped, now all the buses are equipped with surveillance cameras again. So that was a retrofit project. We retrofitted all the buses that we were going to keep in service for a while with camera systems, and then we ordered the new ones that Nick just talked about. We ordered them with the same brand of systems. So now we're 100% cameraed on all the buses, which is good. I attended a key meeting of the statewide bus intercity plan that Caltrans is conducting and orchestrating that's going to have a heavy impact on whether we see a restoration of funding from 5311F, which is where we lost that funding this last year, whether they're going to continue to fund it at a level similar to this year, or if even further cuts are coming. So we, at the CalAct conference in Monterey a couple weeks ago, they had a session to update everyone, all the stakeholders on the process of where they're at. They had done a survey of all the grantees, gotten some input on that. So then they presented the survey results. They seem to be going in a direction that I think will be good for us. One of the strategies that they've indicated they're probably going to pursue is to restrict the funds to operating assistance only, which is what we wanted to use it for anyway. So that's good, and that'll weed out some of the funds, because again, it's a statewide oversubscription, too many projects, too much money, not enough money to give out. So by restricting the projects to operating assistance and prioritizing existing services, that should play well for us, because our Route 20 is an existing service and it needs operating assistance. That's what we're going to spend it on. So I'm cautiously optimistic, but we're not done yet. There's another call statewide in a couple weeks in early December for an update, but they do plan on having the study done and the policy direction in place by the spring. So we should know, as we're developing our budget for 18-19, we should know our fate. One thing I think we're going to want to do, and this plays into what the board was talking about earlier, if we can go ahead and set up our plans for adding that fourth trip per day, that'll fill our schedule gap. It'll also increase the cost of our route, because I think one of the problems we have is our route was cheaper than some of the competitor routes, so they cut our funding accordingly. So one of the odd things that I think we should prepare for is plans to expand that route a little bit with additional trip or two. But certainly we need at least one in the midday, because right now you have to go down and then you're stuck there for 8-9 hours. So I think this positions us well. We can put that in the application, and as spring comes, I think that we should consider that as a strategy. That'll have the benefit of better serving our public, better serving our markets, and hopefully obtaining a little more of this money. So cautiously optimistic on that. I'll update you as more things unfold over the winter, but it seems to be in our favor. They're not using like raw ridership and raw population metrics, which would favor the larger areas. So They're going by population need and percentile of folks that need transit, and those metrics tend to favor us more because we don't have the big population, but we do have the need.
Directors?
I think that's it for my verbal update, but if you guys have any other questions.
I just want to get a little update on the Prop B Caltrans money, the 318.
Oh, yes, and
17,000.
Thank you.
What's the immediate effect? We had passed this in August. For reasons unknown to me, it needed to be, the funds go through our local transportation commission, and that's why we had to have a special meeting to approve that. You have the money, I imagine it's en route now, so what's the plan next year to spend that money?
Thank you for bringing that up. Thanks, Roger. That money, you're right. We approved it as a transit board back in August, and then I was meaning to get it on the agenda in October and didn't quite get it. So by the time I got it to Tamara, she's like, "Oh no, we weren't going to meet in November." So that's hence the special meeting, because it did need to get submitted to Caltrans by mid-November. So we did that. So now the bond sales. The state's planning on selling bonds again in the spring, and if they're successful, that's how the Prop 1B money gets generated, is sale of bonds. So now we're in the queue for our last allocation. It probably won't come, the check's not likely to arrive here till like summer or late spring. But we'll include it in next year's budget. It's capital money, so we don't have to spend it in 1 year necessarily, but it was initially submitted for part bus stops and part facility rehab for our operations center. But those are pretty flexible, so we can do a lot of different things with that.
Good, that's what I wanted to hear, that we have some flexibility with that funding. Public comment on Mr. Rye's report? None? We'll move on and go to number 12, announcements. Directors, any special announcements? No? Okay. Now, the issue of meetings comes up, and, you know, Joe, I talked to you about the necessity for having meetings. Of course, we're scheduled to have a meeting the third Wednesday of every month, and that's where we're at right now, is the third Wednesday of the month. We also have budget constraints, so we don't want to go into the red. Some of these meetings are expensive to conduct, and then, of course, depending on the kind of business, some of which is not exigent and can wait for another meeting, some of which is, and some of which comes on at a moment's notice, and certainly the discussion on the Jed Smith Fifth Street Center was something that developed a little steam later on. Is it necessary to have a December meeting, Joe? Do you have business we need to conduct to have a meeting next month?
No, sir.
Okay.
No, we don't. Not that I see at this point. There's nothing on the radar for December, and I'd like to cancel it if possible. If you look back at the records of this authority, I think we averaged about 6 or 7 meetings a year for all those years. We've been meeting more because we've been doing a lot, and a lot's been on our plate as a board and a very small staff. But yeah, it'd be great if we could ease our way back, at least in the direction of less meetings. Like December would be a good one to cancel.
Well, okay, and again, we're listening to your guidance on this. I have no problem in having these meetings every month if that's what is necessary, but I would like to advise everybody on this board, we have a budget, and I'm trying to operate within it, and then when I see that a meeting costs X number of dollars to run, have you come up here, your time, etc. And I'm the one who signs off on this, on the billing, which approves it, and I see in recent months we've come dangerously close to going into the red, and that creates a whole different problem for this authority if we have to find more money for you in a very challenging time. So I'm going to defer to your recommendations, Joe, on future meetings. We will not have a meeting in December, and we will have our next meeting in 2018, which will be the third Wednesday of the month. I'm not sure what date that is, but somewhere in the neighborhood of January 18th, 17th. Is that somewhere? Does anybody have a calendar in front of them at this point? I don't know what that Wednesday is. So that would be when we would have our, is that the third Wednesday of the month?
Yep, 17th.
Okay. And at 3:30. And then we'll have updates on the market research project. We'll certainly find out how things are moving at the Jed Smith Center and the Fifth Street bus stop. And we'll address those issues that are coming up in the next 6 weeks, 8 weeks, as we move into the new year. Okay, if any other comments at this time, we'll adjourn our meeting today. Thank you.